Hello, everyone. Pastor asked me to take the Wednesday night devotional this week, so I'd like to look with you at Psalm 129, another of the songs of ascent. In this psalm, the psalmist sings about a very modern problem, the problem of injustice. There is something in all of us that longs for the wrongdoing to stop and for wrongdoers to be held accountable for their actions. But when that doesn't happen, it really bothers us. It's like that time you were accused of doing something that your brother did. You remember how you felt? It makes our stomachs turn. It keeps us awake at night. Sometimes it causes us to be afraid. And sometimes it just makes us angry. The question is, how do we handle our feelings about wrongdoing and wrongdoers in a biblical way? The psalmist shows us the way. The particular wrongdoing the psalmist writes about in this psalm is the persistent persecution of the nation of Israel. He begins his song with three poetic lines of lament. A lament is a loud cry of complaint. The first lament, he cries out, "Greatly have they afflicted me." By me, he means the nation of Israel, on whom he calls to add their voices to his. The second lament, "Greatly have they afflicted me from my youth," they all sing out together. This mistreatment, they all affirm, has been going on continually from the very beginning of Israel's national life. The third lament, our inspired writer adds the graphic image of his back being torn apart by a whip, leaving deep wounds like the deep furrows made in a field by a team of oxen pulling a plow. They all sing together, "The plowers plowed upon my back, they made long their furrows." The memory for all of them is excruciating. Who are these people who have caused such distress and pain to the people of God? According to the psalmist, they are people who hate Zion. That is, they despise Jerusalem and the God who chose the city, and the people whom he called to worship him there. They are people who, because of their hatred, have turned to wickedness. That means criminal behavior of every kind. What horrors the nation has endured from the Egyptians and the Canaanites and the Amorites and the Ammonites and the Amalekites and the Philistines, and the list goes on and on through every generation. Can you feel a little of the indignation that has given rise to this psalm? But then the song changes direction with four words. The Lord is righteous. On the one hand, Yahweh is completely free from sin and every moral imperfection. He never does what is wrong or unjust. He never errs. On the other hand, he holds all wrongdoers accountable. And so, the psalmist assures us God, being who he is, has cut the ropes that connect the plow to the oxen. The plowers can no longer carry out their evil works to their intended conclusion. The result? The enemies of Israel have never prevailed. He means they have never been able to complete their greatest desires when it comes to the nation of Israel. What did they wish to accomplish, these enemies of God and his chosen people? At the very least, from the information that follows, these enemies of God wanted to completely humiliate those who trust in God. They wanted to defeat them and drive them from their land. They also wanted to deprive the nation of any good thing, so that the nation appeared to everyone to be accursed. But, and here is the lesson for us modern readers, instead of retaliating and seeking revenge themselves, the children of God cried out to the righteous judge of all the earth. They cried for justice, a balancing of the scales. They have three requests. Where their enemies sought to humiliate them, they cried out, "May all who hate Zion be put to shame." Where their enemies sought to defeat them, they cried out, "May all who hate Zion be turned backward." Where their enemies sought to reduce them to nothing, they cried out, "Let them be like the grass on the housetops." Now no farmer grows hay on top of his house, first, because it withers before anyone can literally pluck it out, and second, because it cannot be harvested. So there stand the reapers with nothing. And no one seeing them standing there in that condition ever says, "The blessing of the Lord be upon you. We bless you in the name of the Lord," as was the custom in Israel when you passed people harvesting their crops. Why? Because the reapers are, quite obviously, not able to make use of the useless grass. The request here is very simple. They sought to reduce us to nothing, reduce them to worthlessness. We began this study with a question: how do we handle our feelings about wrongdoing and wrongdoers in a biblical way? From Psalm 129, the answer is pretty clear. Let's go to God and ask Him to make things right and expect that He will. Because the Church of Jesus Christ has also been persecuted since its inception, we can surely empathize with the Old Testament saints. And we must respond in the same way to injustice leveled at us, in the way that the psalmist in Psalm 129 responded. And we Christians ought to respond in the way that Paul commanded us in Romans 12. First, he calls us to genuine agape love, and then he uses as an ultimate example a loving response to our persecutors. "Beloved," he wrote, "never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.'" That's Deuteronomy 32:35. To the contrary, says Paul, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. The point of all of this is, do not be overcome with the injustices you see, but pray for justice, and treat wrongdoers with acts of kindness. Together these things may very well turn persecutors into preachers of the gospel. It did for Paul.